I'm Elizabeth at Literary Princess, and today I am doing the For the Love of Classics book tag. So this tag was created by Beyond the Pages, and it seems like the original video is no longer up. I was not tagged in it, but I saw Valerie over on Thornfield Books do it, and it seemed like a fun tag. So here we are. All right, there are 14 questions. Let's jump in. Question 1, why do you read classics and how often do you read classics? Okay, we're just starting off like with the heavy hitting questions here. Well, let's go with the easier one first. I read classics like constantly because it's my job as a literature PhD student. I read at least 2 classics a month generally, unless I'm like really depressed and out of it. And I've been doing this for years. I mean, even in high school, I had to read them for classes, so I was just always reading a classic. And I also read them because I liked them. So why do you read classics? I like them, would be the main reason. I wouldn't read stuff if I didn't like it. There's a reason a lot of these books are considered classics. They tell us something about the past, and they kind of let us, or at least for me, they let me go into this kind of other world of the past and live there for a while. And that's the same with any book, really. That's why I like fantasy too. I get to go to this other world and live there a while. With classics, I get to go to the 19th century and live there for a while. Or the early 20th century, or the Renaissance, or medieval times, or whatever. And I just like that. It's fun. And I don't know, so often they're very beautifully written. And I don't know, I like them. That's why I read them. I like them. Question number 2, what is a period country culture that you haven't read many classics from and would like to? So I'm actually gonna go with French literature because I feel like I have not read enough French classics. I have read Madame Bovary, and this is like the ugliest cover that you have ever seen. Who chose these colors, please? Because I would like a word. I read this for my master's degree, and I've also read The Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux, and Madame Bovary is by Gustave Flaubert. So Madame Bovary and Phantom of the Opera I have read, but I really can't think of what other French classics I have read. I have not read anything by Victor Hugo. I have not read The Three Musketeers or The Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah, I don't think I've read anything else. So I would really like to read some more French classics, especially because I am trying to be able to read in French now. That is my goal for next year, is to be able to read some novels in French. So I would like to be able to read French classics in French. I'd also love a copy of Madame Bovary that was not hideous. Question 3, what modern book do you think will be a classic in 100 years' time? I think I'm technically cheating with both of these because I think they're kind of considered like very modern classics even right now, but I do think that both of these in 100 years are going to be being read and studied just like we do with Jane Eyre or Frankenstein or Crime and Punishment or whatever. The first of these is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is one of my favorite books ever, and it's just so good. Love it. This follows a group of college students who are studying the classics, so Greek and Latin. They're very elitist and very pretentious, and they end up murdering one of the members of their group. That is not a spoiler, it literally happens on the first page. But I very much think that in 100 years, this is going to be studied in university, just like how I'm having my students study Jane Eyre right now. And the other one is actually another 90s book. This is Possession by A.S. Byatt. So this follows 2 scholars who each focus on a different Victorian poet, and they find letters between those poets that show that these poets had a love affair. And so we get this kind of dual timelines. We see the scholars in what is the present day, And then we see the two poets, and we have all of the poets' works in here that we get to read. And Byatt wrote all of this herself. I think this is absolutely going to be studied in 100 years' time. I have given this to my students as an option to write their postmodern paper on for my Brit Lit class. So I mean, even now it's getting taught, kind of. I imagine there are people teaching it, but I was like, yes, this is an option. If you don't want to do one of the ones we actually read in class, you can pick another one off this list and possessions on that list. But I do think that this will be studied in the future, absolutely. Question number 4, what was the last classic you read? The last one I finished was actually a reread. It was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I was doing a quick reread before I taught it to my students. You can see all my tabs in it. But yeah, I really liked it. I read it 3 times. The most recent was in February. The second most recent was in December. And then I'd read it like several years ago. But yeah, really love Frankenstein. It's a great book. Question number 5, what was the first classic you ever read? I'm not entirely sure, but I know that this was one that I was given very early on and that I did read very early on, so I'm assuming this is the first one I read. At the very least, it's the first one I can remember reading. This is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This was given to me by my brother and my sister-in-law when I was about 5, I think. And I love these covers. There's another tag video where I'm ranting about how I wanted this edition of The Little Princess and I could never get it. And I still continue to feel that way, but I absolutely adore this cover. Anyway, yeah, I was given this. I read it around the same time. I'd also seen a few movie adaptations. I really loved it. Yeah. Number 6, your favorite classic book cover. Well, this. It's like velvety. It's great. But other than that, I'm limiting myself to ones that I own because otherwise it would be insanity. But I was like looking over my classics shelf and I was like, there wasn't really a favorite that stood out to me other than The Secret Garden, which I just like because it's velvety and pretty. But I do really love all of the covers of the Penguin Classics. So this is just a vindication of the rights of women by Mary Wollstonecraft. That's not necessarily my favorite, but this one's in good shape and you can like see it. But I like the painting and the white thing and the black with the red letters and the white letters, and I like the spines and I like how they look on my shelf. And I'm really mad that they changed the design to they no longer match, and look at how they look. I'm so angry. But anyway, yes, so these versions of the Penguin Black Spine Classics are probably my favorites. Not a fan of the new design, although this is a great image for Dracula, but I hate how that looks, and I hate that the author name is no longer in red. But yes, these are great. Question 7, classic authors you wish had written more books. Emily Bronte. Wuthering Heights is my favorite book ever. Not just my favorite classic, but my favorite book ever. And the fact she only wrote one novel kills me. And I think that this was also Valerie's answer for this question. And she talked about this as well. There is reason to believe that Emily Bronte was working on another novel. There was a letter found in her writing desk from her publisher regarding a second novel. But it's lost. Either she destroyed it or Charlotte destroyed it or something. And we don't have it. And I will forever be sad about it because I just want another Emily Bronte book because Wuthering Heights is amazing and I just would have loved to see what she was going to do next. Ugh. tragedy. Question number 8, least favorite classic. Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. I had to read this my junior year of high school for my American Lit class, and I hated it so much. I've ranted about this on my channel before, but I'm gonna rant about it again because I like ranting. This focuses on an American man who is an ambulance driver in Italy during World War I. He falls in love with this nurse, Catherine, and you know what? I don't even remember his name. What is his name? Does he have a name? I don't know. Anyway, he falls in love with this nurse Catherine, who's the most insufferable female character I have ever had the displeasure of coming across, and it is because Ernest Hemingway is sexist. I don't like his writing. I don't like his characters. I don't like the fact that I got a stupid essay question about it on my exam that caused me to fail said exam. I just hate this book. I will forever hate it. I will never read it again. I will never read anything by Hemingway again. Don't try to change my mind. I don't want to. I've had other people try to change my mind. I had some guy message me on another social media platform that was like, "You're so whiny for saying that you don't like Hemingway. You're such a child." I was like, my man, you are the one who is cold messaging me out of nowhere. Step back. Like, if you love Ernest Hemingway, I am sorry. Like I said, my favorite book is Wuthering Heights. So many people hate Wuthering Heights. So like, I know what it's like to have people not like your favorite book, but just always remember everyone has different opinions and different tastes. I personally despise this book and will never forgive it for causing me to fail my exam. But yeah, that is my rant. We'll move on now. Question number 9 is your favorite translated classic. I don't really know. I don't know if I have one. Like, a lot of the classics I've read in translation I've been kind of meh about, but I decided to go with Buddenbrooks by Thomas Mann. This is a German classic, and honestly, this is fantastic. It is the story of a family. It covers a few different generations. I thought this was really great. I thought Mann does a great job with his characterizations, and it was just a really enjoyable read. Question number 10, your favorite modern classic, which is defined as one published after 1900. This is a very new favorite of mine because I used to hate this book. This is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I just reread this last December because I am teaching it in, I guess, April, next month. Oh, wow. I'd originally hated it when I read it before, but I adored it this time. I thought this, just so amazing. This is a stream of consciousness narrative that follows a few different characters over the course of 24 hours. It's just so amazing. Virginia Woolf is such a great writer. The way she describes things and brings you into these characters' minds, I just loved. It was so good. Definitely a favorite. Still not like a favorite for modern classics. Like, it's never going to beat out my Victorian classics because ultimately it is very modern and I'm like too Victorian, but I did really love this. Question number 11, classic literary places you would like to visit. So I have visited quite a few classic literary places. The Bronte Parsonage at Haworth is the main one that I adore, love. I would happily go back there. I've also been to Bath and been to the Jane Austen Center there. Ones that I still want to go to and haven't been to yet, I would say the top 3 are Jane Austen's house in Hampshire, which is just this beautiful cottage, and I didn't get to go when I lived over there, and I would really like to. Elizabeth Gaskell's house in Manchester, which, okay, I went to school in Lancaster. It's literally an hour away. I flew into Manchester Airport. every time I went over. I'm like, how did I not go to Gaskell's house? But I didn't. I really didn't spend any time in Manchester. So I would still really like to go there. And then for the third place would be Monk's house, which was Virginia and Leonard Woolf's house that Virginia Woolf wrote most of her books at. And it just has this gorgeous gardens, and the interior is so beautiful. And I want to go there. I want to go to all of them. My dream trip would be to the UK to go to all of these different literary places. I told my husband, I'm like, this is what I want to do when I graduate my PhD, but I don't think we'll be doing that. But it's nice to dream eventually, someday. Question number 12 is first classic you would recommend for a child. Ooh, this is hard. Okay. I don't know. It entirely depends on the child. It depends on how old are they? What are they interested in? What's their reading level? Like, I would not recommend the same books to my nephew, who's 10 years old, as I would to my best friend's niece, who's 11 years old, because they just have such different personalities and tastes. And even when they were younger, they still did. But if I had to like pick one to just generally recommend to children of various potential ages, it would probably be The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. It's an adventure story. It's exciting. It's fast-paced. There's just so much. There's things like riddles and things to keep children engaged while you're reading it to them. You can get lovely illustrated editions. I read it when I was around 8 or 9, I think, and I adored it. So I do think this is a good first classic for a child. And then from there, more children's classics, and then eventually move them up to adult classics. That's what my family did with me. Like, I started with The Secret Garden, A Little Princess Peter Pan, The Hobbit, Chronicles of Narnia, and A Wrinkle in Time, and then my aunt like slowly moved me up to adult classics. So I just think that's the best way to do it. But yeah, The Hobbit would be a good first classic for a kid. Number 13, classics you think are mistitled, and what would you title them? Daniel Deronda should be called Gwendolyn Harleth. Quite frankly, I think there should actually be 2 novels, and one of them should be Gwendolyn Harleth, and the other one should be Daniel Deronda, because the stories are so separate, and they're really only thinly linked, and like technically the characters that, like, it didn't have to be the same characters at all. It could have just been different characters in 2 different books. But I really do think that Gwendolyn Harleth's story is the more interesting story here. And yeah, I do think that. Number 14, your favorite classic you'd like to recommend to everyone. Okay, so again, there's like not one that I would recommend to everyone, because people's tastes are so varied, and honestly, my favorite classic is Wuthering Heights, and I would not recommend that to everyone because a lot of people don't like it. I know it's a polarizing book. So I'm doing a few different things here. I'm picking a classic that I would recommend to a certain group of people, and I'm going to name that group. And I'm also picking one of my underrated classics to recommend. So it's probably my favorite underrated classic, because like I would recommend Jane Eyre to everybody, generally speaking, but everybody recommends Jane Eyre to everybody, so I want to be different. So I am going to recommend a book for people who like Jane Austen, and that is Miss Marjoribanks by Margaret Oliphant. It's funny. There's very subtle satire here. It's drawing rooms and parlors and women navigating the social sphere.
of their lives in a small neighborhood. This follows Lucilla Marchbanks, and yes, it is pronounced Marchbanks. Don't ask me. I don't know why. But Lucilla has just come home from boarding school, and she basically wants to run society in her town of Carlingford. She's very much like an Emma Woodhouse, but if Emma were competent. So you know how Emma's kind of making a mess of things? Lucilla's on top of her shit. She knows what she's doing. She's like, okay, I've got this. She is a competent Emma Woodhouse. So I think this would be really great for people who are fans of Jane Austen. So if you love Jane Austen, definitely check out Margaret Oliphant's Miss Marchbanks and her other books because she's a fantastic author. So question 15 is to tag some people. And I don't know who has done this tag or who wants to do this tag, but I am going to tag 2 people. And that is going to be Shelley Swearingen and Alana Estelle. If you don't want to do this tag, certainly do not feel obligated to do this tag, but I would be really interested in hearing your thoughts on these different questions. So that is it with the For the Love of Classics book tag. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Do you agree with my answers? Disagree? What are some of your answers to these questions? It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.